Hey there, BMCC Youth. Pastor Nate here, and we're coming to you from my new home. If you guys did not know, I just got married and we just moved into our place not that long ago. And so I'm filming this video in my new man cave. We've been talking a lot about our faith and what our faith looks like when it becomes our own and how to make our faith our own. And we're going to be continuing that conversation. Today is our last entry in the series that we've been talking about called Mine, where we are talking about our faith. And let's just get into it. So if you don't know this about me, one of my favorite things to do is to travel. I love to travel. I love almost getting to the destination, like the process and getting there, just as much as the actual destination itself. I love all of that, the travel, every aspect of it. But I even love it more when it includes going to airports. I don't know why, but I'm fascinated with airports. It's so much fun to me to be able to watch everyone. It feels like a human aquarium is what it feels like to me when it comes to the airports. But it's fun to watch people. Don't get me wrong, I love flying. I just do not like the idea of crashing and plummeting to my death, being thousands of feet in the air. Like, have you actually just thought about it? Like this I don't know, this man-made this plane, it's weird. This plane is in the air and it's no bigger than like some houses and whatnot. And we're expecting it to just float in the air for a while. Like, yeah, that's a little terrifying. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But if you've ever been on an airplane, you've probably felt a little bit terrified at some point. And you felt that nagging feeling of like, am I the only one that feels this way on this airport or in this airplane? You literally look around and everyone's calm, cool, collected. People are just chilling. And you just think like, am I the only one thinking like, are y'all not worried that we're like in this tin can flying through the air that could go down at any minute? Like, I can't be the only one thinking that. And you know what? It's the same in every area of our life. We don't want to feel like we're the only ones having these questions. In fact, we're all hesitant to speak up about our doubts a lot of times because we wonder if we're the only ones that feel that way. And it can be a little scary. For a lot of us, no place makes us feel more uncomfortable about doubts than church. We think for some odd reason we should not be allowed to doubt anything that we learn at church. But the reality is we all have questions. We all have some doubts when it comes to church, our faith, and this God that we worship. We all have these doubts. But for some odd reason, we don't talk about them, which is weird to me because everyone has doubts at some point in life. And you would think that the church would be the place that we're able to talk about the things that we're not sure about. Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, think about it. It's crazy, but like we worship a God we can't really see. We hear and we've read stories about a flood that covered the whole earth. We worship and follow a God who parted seas. We worship a God that made blind people be able to see. Sick people being not sick anymore. And the whole thing centers around a guy who died and came back to life. And nobody has any questions? Are you for real? That's ridiculous. We all should be having some questions. In a lot of ways, our faith feels a little fragile. I got these Jenga blocks set up right here. And you know, it's fine for us a lot of times to ask God questions and to have doubts about things. But for some reason, we think that it only applies to like surface level things. So like questions like, should I go to college? Or what college should I go to? Does God want me to date this person or not? A lot of those would be considered like surface questions, which is like taking a Jenga block off the top. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't ruin the integrity of the rest of the Jengas. But when we get deeper to maybe questions that we've had a little bit more and that seem a little bit more serious, like questions about creation or anything in the Bible or Jesus himself, it's like taking them down a little bit lower. And it feels like if we start asking those questions, all these Jenga blocks will just fall down and our world will shatter. A lot of us feel that way. But maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe you've had real questions about whether God is real, or about, is God good? Or is Jesus exactly who he said he is? And when we do that, we're pulling the blocks out from the bottom a little bit more. And when we do that, it seems more scary than if we're taking them off of the top. And we're afraid that if we start having these doubts and talking about them, in these deep questions that we've been having about our faith, it might bring our whole world down. But the truth is, you probably do have questions. I do. We all do. We don't just talk about them. And often we don't even know why we are not talking about them. Most of us have no idea where we got the idea that we can't talk about this and we have to be quiet about questions when it comes to our faith and the church. Maybe your grandma told you to quit asking questions and just believe when you were a kid. Maybe you're convinced that because God sees everything, he'll strike you with lightning if you vocalize your questions. So we keep quiet. What makes this sad is that a lot of us, our faith is really important to us. Showing up at church and being a part of a corporate worship is important to us. So most of us just push our doubts out of our minds and think about something else. We refuse to address the situation. In fact, we've even begun to believe that this is how it's supposed to be. We think that being a good Christian means turning off the parts of our brains that don't ask questions and don't have doubts. And we just take what we're being told without backing it up and figuring it out for ourselves. But maybe you've discovered that not dealing with your doubts doesn't make them go away. Because if you don't talk about them, they're not going away. So the question is, what do we do about doubts? If they don't go away, is our best option really just to make them quiet? To ignore them long enough that we don't feel them anymore? And if we're honest with ourselves, is that really what God wants for us? If you have doubts, you're in good company, because everyone that has come before you and everyone that comes after you is going to have doubts. In fact, even when people saw Jesus in person, face to face, witnessed him and everything he was doing, all of his miracles, they still found themselves uncertain and doubtful about him. One of the most dramatic places we see this is in an account written in the book of Mark. According to Mark's account, Jesus had been away with 3 of his other disciples. When he came back, he noticed that his followers and few other religious leaders were arguing. Jesus wanted to know why. So we read in Mark chapter 9, 16 through 18. "What are you arguing with them about?" he asked. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of his speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth and gnashes his teeth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. It sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Man shows up, his son is somehow being attacked and possessed by an evil spirit. We don't really fully understand what that really means, but based on the dad's description, it sounds very bad and not good. It would be terrifying to see someone like that, especially your own kid. Like, you gotta feel for the dad in this situation. The dad just wanted his son to feel better. So he takes him to see a man named Jesus. Maybe the dad had heard that Jesus was able to do things that most people couldn't, and he heard of the amazing things Jesus was doing. Maybe he thought Jesus was his last resort. One thing was for sure, the dad was desperate. Jesus asked the boy to be brought to him. We read Mark chapter 9, 20 through 22. So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you could do anything, take pity on us and help us." This guy standing in front of Jesus, who had already calmed the storm, healed people, and raised a girl back to life by saying a word. And the dad asks, "Jesus, if you can?" Like, really? If you can? I've been hearing all these things about you. Can you? Really? Like, are you kidding me, dude? Maybe in the emotion of the moment, the dad forgot who in the world he was talking to. I think that can happen. Yeah, we do that. But not this dad. He has the question on the purpose. Maybe he saw Jesus and realized he couldn't hide his feelings anymore. So he spoke what was true. He spoke what was honest and what he was feeling, which was he was having doubts. And he still said it. And what does Jesus do? Jesus doesn't smack him upside the head. Jesus doesn't strike him down with lightning. Jesus doesn't even correct him or tell him to be quiet. Nope, Jesus repeats what the man said. But I don't think he did it to make the dad feel bad. I think he did it to meet the dad where he was. Jesus met him in the middle of his uncertainty, in his doubt, in his questioning. "If you can," said Jesus. "Everything is possible for the one who believes." Mark 9:23. If it were me, I would have backpedaled and been like, "Oh, Jesus, that's not what I meant. Not what I meant at all." Not this dad. Instead, he owned it. He owned what he said, and he meant it. Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." Mark 9:24. It's a weird thing to say, isn't it? I do believe, but help me with my unbelief. In other words, I do believe, but I don't. I want to believe this, but I still have questions. I want to have faith, but I still have doubts. I need this to be true, but I'm not sure. If we're honest, a lot of us can feel this guy's frustration. We feel like they're opposites. If we have one, we can't have the other. But here's this guy stands before Jesus, talking to Jesus and admitting both of these things. And guess what? Jesus was okay with it. The Bible doesn't tell us what happened to the man after everything was resolved. But I imagine his faith was never the same after that day. Our faith works a lot like that too. Having doubts doesn't mean you'll lose your faith whatsoever. And neither does talking about your doubts or questions. In fact, the opposite is true. We don't lose it, but dealing with our doubt is a part of growing our faith. Let me say that again. Dealing with our doubt is a part of growing our faith. It's true that talking about your doubts can do more for your faith than it does for weakening it. Having those doubts and talking about them is always a good thing. Maybe that's why when asked what the commandment was the greatest, Jesus said this: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Matthew 22:37. One of the things that I love about Jesus is that he didn't say turn off your brain or stop asking questions. Instead, he encouraged us to use our minds to know God better. Maybe for you that means stop ignoring your doubts. Start tonight by writing down 2 doubts or 2 questions that you guys have about your faith or about church. The second thing you can do is be honest with one another about your doubts. Talk about them with your friends, talk about them with your parents, talk about them with me or with your small group leaders. Talk about your doubts. I promise you, no one's going to get mad at you. And I think you'd be surprised when you find out that they've probably dealt with these same doubts that you're dealing with. Let's go all the way back to the fear of flying with planes. A few years ago, I met some pilots. And you know what? I was honest with them. I told them that I had fear and anxiety when it came to flying, that I thought we were going to fall to the ground. These pilots were super nice, and they talked to me about the physics and about the science behind flying and everything, which I kind of knew, but they gave it a little bit more. And it helped me when it came to the idea of falling out of the air and crashing. If I hadn't been honest with my doubts, that conversation with those pilots would have never happened. I think the same is true for you. Your faith isn't going to fall apart if you ask questions. Dealing with doubt is part of growing your faith. It's just going to make it better. So talk about it. Ask questions. Do the things that you know that you need to do to make your faith your own. I want you guys to be thinking of ways that you can express your questions and your doubts. Either write them down, talk about them with someone, do something instead of storing them down and pushing them down inside of you. You may not have any doubts right now, and that's okay. You may doubt everything, and that is perfectly okay too. I want you to know that this is a safe place. BMCC Youth and your small group leaders in your small groups is a safe place to have doubts. It's completely okay. We do know some things that you probably haven't thought about or said out loud exist inside of you. And we can also help you guys search for answers. We're here for you. If you have questions, just ask. And we can share with how we have dealt with our faith and how we've overcome doubts and questions in our own lives. The point is, so many people lose their faith or leave the faith as they get into high school, college, or even adulthood. Not because they asked questions or because they had doubts. It's because they didn't address them and talk about them. That's why. My goal for you now, for years from now, is that you have a growing, healthy, strong, and honest relationship with God. And just like reading the Bible, serving, attending church and being in a small group, dealing with your doubt is a part of growing your faith that you can call your own. Guys, I love you. I miss you. I know I say this a lot, but I look forward to the day that we can meet again. I'm going crazy not being able to hang out and see you guys, and it's been hard. Hang in there. We're gonna get through this. I look forward to seeing you guys when I can. If you guys are watching this, hopefully you're joining the middle school small group that's meeting on Zoom Tuesdays at 7, and the high school that's meeting on Wednesdays at 7. Hopefully you guys are taking advantage of those opportunities. I look forward to seeing you guys on there if you show up, and I'll see you guys later.